All right. Hello, everyone. So today I'm here with both Michael and David, and we're here to actually talk about how you decide on choosing for a college. We understand that now all of your acceptances have pretty much rolled in, and at this point, you're probably wondering, okay, so out of all my options, how do I decide on choosing a school? So today, that's what me, Michael, and David are going to be here for that. And I guess, Michael and David, any things you want to start off with before we get started?
Just it's gonna be an informative session. So even though you may not have time, just please try to listen to everything because you might find a lot of useful tidbits for your college process.
Mm. Alrighty, perfect. We'll go ahead and get started. So I think just to talk about, why we chose our colleges, and I know it's not going to be the most diverse section. All of us are, three Asian males who all go to USC, so it won't probably be the most like diverse perspectives. But we just want to give you our input because I'm pretty sure the three of us have had different experiences on why we ended up choosing USC. So I guess to start off for me first, I think USC for me was probably the most practical option that I had, and I wasn't too much worried about which school I had to attend to. And what I mean by that is that I really just applied to biology, like bioengineering, as the major for majority of my schools. So regardless of what I had, all the schools I had for options for, like if they're in biology anyway, so I didn't worry about like if I had different majors per school. So I think that was kind of something that I wasn't too worried about. And then second, in between like in-state or out-of-state, I wasn't worried about either as well too. Like if I stayed in-state, it would be really good because I'd be close to home. But out-of-state would also give me new experiences. So in my opinion, it was a pretty good perspective. For me, I think what it came down to was tuition, kind of the overall lifestyle, and what I thought would be the most practical. Because I was pretty indifferent to like school rankings. I didn't really care about which school was considered better than another. I was just like, okay, you know what? Let me just find a school that makes the most sense to me. Because in all honesty, and it sounds kind of harsh when I say it, but like I could really care less about which school I went to because all of them were schools that I would have attended anyways. When I was applying, I was really grateful that I chose schools that I wanted to go to. So I ended up going for USC because for me, the tuition and the financial aid package for me in my end was probably the best out of all the schools. Going to USC would have meant that I would essentially leave college debt free. So I mean that's like a huge win already, and I'm pretty sure that for a lot of students that might be something that would be a big factor as well too. In terms of like their science, like their biology department and like research opportunities, just like extracurriculars in general. I mean, USC was really strong with that. They have an up and coming research program. I think just recently today too, like the Keck School of Medicine was just ranked a little bit higher this year from like US News ranking. So like they do have an up and coming program. The science department was pretty good. I've heard like good things about it online. And overall, like, they're known to give you extracurricular opportunities and like that networking system. So that was something I was like really fond of as well. And I live in Southern California, so this was super close to home. And since family is something I do really care about a lot, just being able to come by on like the weekends or like every now and then was, I think pretty important. It still gives me that opportunity to live life outside of home, but also return home if I need to. So I think those were like the really major underlying factors that went into me choosing USC. But yeah, I think David or Michael, if any of you guys want to take it up from here.
Oh yeah, so I had pretty similar reasons to why Christian chose USC. So the first most important one was probably the financial aid package because like I also have a brother, so I don't want to like burden him too much with tuition, and like USC gave a pretty hefty amount of money to me, so it was like a pretty no-brainer compared to like all the other choices or colleges I got accepted into. There's also the fact that like even though I initially wanted a STEM major, like USC offered like flexibility with majors and like they're pretty strong on like a variety of departments. So like even if I chose to drop out, which I did, of pre-med, I still had the other alternative of pre-law, which was pretty strong for USC. And just the fact that it's a private school and close to home meant that I could also, like Christian said, go back to home or to school, and the commute would be pretty short. And I would be able to like get more connected with my professors, which you wouldn't likely be able to do in a public university, given like the amount of students in the classroom.
Nice, and then I'll go next. So for me, why I chose USC, it was really known like really for three main reasons. One was location. I really wanted to go to a school in a way a big city, like since I live in a very suburban place. So yeah, and then I thought that like in a city of LA, one of the most well-known city, not just California, but in the United States. I know there's going to be a lot of opportunities around there. So that goes to my second reason why I chose USC. I know within LA, there's a lot of hospitals nearby. I know there's a children's orthopedic hospital or a center near USC, but they also have a Keck Med school. They also has a dental school as well. And being pre-health, like right now I'm pre-med, but even before I knew like what I really want to do, and like if I want to become a dentist or a doctor, I knew that USC will offer that flexibility since they just have a dental school. And remember, there's only like 6 to 8 dental schools in California. So yeah, opportunities, location. And the third one was okay, it was ranking. So to me, like I'm not sure if this was like the correct way of thinking right now. I think I shouldn't have thought of ranking as like something as so important in choosing which college I want to go to. But I knew that USC was like really high compared to like a lot of schools I got into before. So yeah, I also chose USC based on that too. So yeah.
Hey, awesome. Yeah, and again, just want to second the fact that to remind everyone, this is solely on USC in general. We can't speak on the same for like all the other schools, but we can give advice on like at least what we consider for other perspective and you know what we've heard from friends as well too. All right, perfect. So I think moving on to the next question that a lot of people were asking was what to recommend other people as the most important factors on choosing. So you probably heard from like me, you know, Michael, David, and I, like we talked about like, you know, practicality, we talked about like tuition, we talked about location and whatnot. But I guess now, again, now that we're actually in school and we've kind of can reflect back on it, I think we can kind of list out a couple of factors. I think for me, I think to go to one thing, you know, going back to tuition, tuition is such a big thing in choosing a school. I don't think people realize how much schools cost nowadays. Like every year, the the price of tuition just keeps getting inflated higher and higher. I know for USC, for example, like they just announced recently that they increased tuition by another 2%, which 2% may not seem like a lot, but when you put it in the grand scheme of things, when tuition is like 60 to 80K, that's a lot of money. Like 2% is actually a pretty significant amount. That's a couple thousand. And like I think that's something super important to consider because every school is going to give you a different financial aid package. And even though there's like online calculators that can tell you about what you should expect to get, there's no 100% guarantee on that. At the same time, maybe like you did really well in your application and the school wants to offer you a scholarship, then maybe you might also consider that as well too. I know there's a lot of other factors, but I think tuition is one that a lot of students should heavily consider because student debt is no joke, especially if you're a student interested in, let's say, like David going into med school or Michael wanting to go into law school. You're going to have to pay more eventually. And financial aid might not be as good as it is in your undergraduate years. So to prevent you from like stacking on like the student debt that people talk about paying off for such a long period of time, I think, at least from my opinion, probably one of the biggest factors for me was tuition, like just how much like just classes cost nowadays. Mike or Dave, do you want to add another main important factor?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Just adding on to your tuition thing, it's just like the fact that undergrads, like, I've heard that loan companies give a bit more leniency towards people who are just entering college. Like, they have lower interest rates, but like, if you go to grad school on, they don't give you like grace period anymore. So like, it'll be just more expensive in the long run. It's like for sure, tuition should be a major factor. But like, I think another thing you should be looking at is like the ability of your university to cater towards like your pre-professional interests, if you have any. Because I know like some universities like UOP have like these professional dental tracks or accelerated dental tracks, or if you just go through it, you come out a dentist. And like if you're interested in these kind of like preset career plans, then you should probably look into those kind of schools too. Yeah.
Mm.
And Dave, you want to add another one?
Yeah, I can add on top of what Michael said. For me, I would say that it's definitely the opportunities that both the school offers you and the city in which the school is located in can offer you. Like, it's very important since being pre-med, I know getting to graduate school is like something like my main goal for college. And I know it's going to be really competitive as well. So when you're going to school, you have to realize that in order to not only like learn as much as you can about the career you want to go into, but also like in a way boost up your resume or application to know that you're a strong applicant. So like what I said before, LA has a lot of hospitals in the area, and UCSF has Keck Med School. They have a dental school, a pharmacy school. So I know that both LA, the city, and UC will provide a lot of opportunities. So yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think, again, just to remind everyone, like I know these are obviously factors that you probably considered when you're trying to figure out which colleges to apply to, but there are also factors you have to reconsider now that you've got accepted. Because what I think the one thing people realize is that once you get accepted, in most cases, you don't get accepted to every school that you get into. And that's totally okay. But now what that allows you to do is now you have like a select pool of schools you can choose from, and you can even research even further than you did before, because now you can you're going to constantly reevaluate, okay, which school am I going to go to? Like, what do I remember about this school offering that this school doesn't, vice versa. So that's why we just want to remind you of these things. I think to touch up on another factor, I think David and, you know, I think all of us actually mentioned was location. So that varies per student. Obviously, with the three of us, we all wanted local schools very close to home. Like we're all in Southern California, and USC is pretty much at most an hour drive from all of us, depending on traffic. For a lot of students, though, I know of students who want to go out of state because they want to experience more independence. They want to be able to kind of explore a new area and a new environment. And I also totally agree with that as well too. I think to some extent I can agree that even though I'm familiar with LA, going to USC was still a whole new environment for me because I didn't go home like every single weekend. I came home like maybe once a month every now and then. So you still get that experience locally, but I totally understand if people want to go like out of state for the experience. Like I know a lot of my friends want to go like New York City, for example, right? Experience a different city life, or maybe some people just want to go to like Seattle and see like weather change, because in California there's really only one weather here and it's just sunny all the time. So yeah, so I mean location is also a factor, but just keep in mind though that it is important to consider, like if family is something important to you and you do intend on like wanting to see them, just keep that into consideration, that you might want to say in state or like pretty relatively close by if that's something you want to value. Michael or David, did you have anything on location?
No, you touched upon all the main points.
No, I agree.
Okay, awesome. And then, yeah, just to kind of reiterate what David and Michael said, like I said, by now all of you guys would have applied to schools. Like for example, Michael mentioned UOP's dentistry program and pre-med programs at other institutions. Like obviously, if that's what you're intending to apply for and like you knew of these programs, that's the reason why you applied. But again, just remember, now that you have like a smaller pool of options to choose from, because maybe you didn't get accepted to all your schools, maybe you did. Like for those that did, all the best to you, right? Like that's hands on, like my hat's down to you. But more often than not, I think the majority of students don't get accepted to every single school they get accepted into. And so therefore, now that you have that smart pool, just reevaluate like which school, if you do want to consider like programs and majors, understand like what maybe is something that will give me that opportunity. Like if you want to be a doctor, how will that school provide you the opportunities? If you want to be a lawyer, etc. So that's I think another big thing to consider as well too. It's just kind of like the whole academics, extracurriculars vibe as well. And then the last factor I want to touch upon is student life. I think student life actually has a big important factor. It's like kind of your environmental factors. Student life, and I'd also consider a little bit with the location, because in all due honesty, every school is going to have a different demographic of certain students, of different ethnic races, like diversity, and like that's going to happen for sure. And that differs per school. And if there's like a certain environment you want to, be able to engage yourself in, like a school that's very diverse, right? Maybe a school that has specific ideologies, specific core values, you also might want to reconsider those as well too. I think to some extent for me in USC, I would say it's pretty diverse. I think Michael and David, would you agree with that to some extent?
Yeah, for sure. It's like since it's in the heart of LA, which is like one of the most diverse cities, I would say, across the US, it's a pretty wide range of demographics.
And I guess something to add on is my dad actually encouraged me to go to USC, since like compared to UCI, it's much more diverse, and he wants me to like meet new people, broaden my perspective. So yeah.
No, I totally agree with that as well too. Because again, like maybe for like me, for example, I can speak on it. Like I came from a very Asian heavy high school, and like while it wasn't like a terrible environment, like it was pretty comfortable. I understand that when I get out into the real world, I might not stay in the same city. I have to move around, and I want to also experience the differences. Being able to learn about other people's cultures and like their factors as well too, I think would be super cool to kind of engage into. So yeah, just some other things to consider on that. But another factor we wanted to touch into, which was also a very popular question, was does the major for the school matter? And I think all of us will probably give our own perspective on this. I'll start off by saying it's a little bit of yes and no. Yes, in the sense of that, let's say you want to apply to some school for a science degree, right? If you're going to apply to a school for a science degree and you want to choose a school, for that major, you want to choose a school that's going to be able to provide you quality lectures and like the lab opportunities. Not every school in the nation is going to have as expensive of like a research department or like a laboratory facility that's going to maybe allow you to engage into the sciences that much, and that's something you may want to consider. Also, I know like liberal arts schools, for example, although it's not just liberal arts that they're focused on, they are still very strong in the humanities, right? So you might consider those because they're known historically to be very strong in them. I know USC, one of the biggest things we are known for is business, right? Being in the heart of LA in a big city, that's a really great opportunity. But additionally, cinematic arts, where next to Hollywood, we have people like us, like really famous directors that came from USC and actors as well. So that's really great opportunities for it too. But I say it doesn't really necessarily matter, at least in my opinion, is because at the end of the day, which is what I say a lot, is that college is what you make of it, right? So even if the school isn't like, oh, number one in engineering or number one in business or whatever track you're going on to, if you like study hard, you put in the effort to like do your networking, to communicate with other people, talk to professors, seek out the opportunities, which are going to be available at every college. Don't get me wrong, they'll differ, but they'll be available nonetheless. Then I think that your major for the school doesn't really matter. Like I can understand, yeah, there are some schools that are better than others for majors, and that's true. Rankings do show that, and to some extent, the rankings do represent that kind of prowess that each school has. But at the end of the day, it's what you want to do with it. So you don't have to like really solely base off of like those rankings at the end of the day. And then Michael, Dave, you want to add anything on that?
No, like I totally agree because the majors at the end of the day is just like because like the only thing I would say that matters, like you were saying, if you're getting into like a specific science-focused school or a literature-focused school, it's like known for being competitive in that nature. The only reason it would matter is it would hinder your chances of getting in if you choose like something that's competitive. But like in regards to like your actual performance and like your career prospects or what you want to do in the future, like your major doesn't really matter as long as you feel like the necessary prerequisites for a course. Because I have a friend who's in LA right now, and she's pursuing pre-med, but she's majoring in religion. So like it's quite a unorthodox, like not the career path you would want to think that many people would take, but like she's filling out the necessary prerequisites. So like it doesn't really matter what you choose in the major. And like some other occupations like law or business, they don't really have like a set path for you because you can major in anything and still come out as long as you network correctly or just do your extracurriculars in high school or in college, I mean. So yeah, I just agree with Christian is saying. I don't think it's too important. Just do what you can to make the most of your experience in college, and you'll be fine.
And then, yeah, I have like the same idea as both Christian and Michael. Of course, like it would depend between like what major you choose. I heard that for like business and for engineering, like how prestigious your school is and like what's the ranking of those engineering or business colleges within the university. Like I know those could. That's what I heard. I'm not quite sure, but I heard it matters quite a lot to a lot of like a lot of hiring companies. But I guess you can do more research on that. But for me, like what Michael and Christian was saying, like in my opinion, it doesn't matter that much since in most colleges you're going to go to or like the college that you apply to, like for biology, it's going to be like about the same for almost every college you go to. You're going to learn about biology, general chemistry, biochemistry if needed, and if you're on the pre-med track, you're going to take the exact same prerequisites to begin with. So yeah, I wouldn't focus solely on like if you're going to choose which school you go to, I wouldn't focus too solely on like what major you like applied for in the college, because remember, first of all, you can change major. It might take some time, but you can definitely change majors. And second is really like what I said for graduate schools, like you're going to take the same classes. So it doesn't matter that much. It does matter a little bit, but not that much. What really matters like what you do outside of those classes. Like if the extracurriculars you take will make you like vastly different from all the other applicants out there. So yeah.
And I think just to touch up on an important point David mentioned is that especially when you're applying to graduate school, whether it be law or pre-med, whatever it may be, at the end of the day, when their schools are giving prerequisites, they're not going to differ that much because they want to be able to give all the students the information that's necessary to succeed in med school. Because think about it, at the end of the day, whether you're coming from USC, UCLA, maybe some school in like New York, Texas, whatever, right? Like you're all going to be pulled into that same medical school. So it doesn't even matter where you're from at that point anymore. Like you would have all had the same prerequisites to take or like the knowledge to do med school properly. And you'll be accepted there for a reason. And don't get me wrong, it's not like every school is going to like, oh, just because you went there, it's going to be harder. I've seen students who say that, oh, I went to a school that even though ranking wise, it wasn't ranked like as highly as like, maybe like USC or other schools, they still got into med school because it's what they made of it. Like they chose to take opportunity of that. They still did well in their classes. They did well in extracurricular activities. So I think, a lot of people, I would say, especially maybe in like certain communities, it's like there's a big pressure on like the school name. And I would say don't dictate your life around that for the major, because at the end, it's like not all rainbow and butterflies from what it may be. Yeah, awesome. All right, moving on to the next question. This one was deciding between how to know between public schools and a private school. So for those maybe in California, you have like the UC system, the Cal State systems, but maybe also to privates. I know another popular one I know is like the University of Massachusetts has like a public school system. So debating between public versus private, I think tuition comes back to a really big important point. Tuition is so much cheaper at a public school. Like the Cal States, UC schools, my gosh, their tuitions, like probably like 4 years worth of like UCLA would probably be 1 year of USC. Like in all honesty, that's like the UC and Cal State tuition would be so much cheaper. So like that's like a pro I think about it. Um, and they're also really great education systems. Don't get me wrong. Just because you go to a public school doesn't mean it's a worse school than a private school. Like, no, that's not the point. Again, college is what you make of it. But so don't worry about like, oh, I'm going to a public school, and then these guys like, oh yeah, I'm going to private school. Like, I think that entire notion of between those two entities is kind of off. But I will say, for example, that public schools will typically be much larger, like significantly larger than a private school. So if you, like Michael mentioned earlier, if you want that engagement in a smaller population, you might want to choose a private school. But tuition is another factor. I think maybe also extracurricular opportunities. You'll have to check in with that as well too. Typically, public schools also have larger campuses. You have to travel a little bit more. I know being at USC, we don't have to travel too much to get to our classes, but I've seen campuses like maybe Irvine, San Diego, UCLA. Like it'll take you 30 minutes to walk from one end of the campus to the other. So it takes a little bit of time. And those are the main ones I have off the top of my head. Michael or David, did you have something to add to that?
Just a note for the tuition prices. I don't know if it's the same for all of the states, but I know for the UC systems, if you're like out of state or if you're an international student, then like the prices are going to be quite different. So like, it's essentially going to be the same as attending a private versus public school. So just something to note.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I guess to add on, I know Christian touched up on this too. It's like private schools and public schools, they might have like different, I guess, different amount. Here, wait, let me rephrase. So like, I know some of you probably heard that like private schools will probably offer more like extracurricular opportunities, like research opportunities and stuff, because there's let's see, there's more faculty, there's like a higher faculty to student ratio compared to a lot of public schools. But in my opinion, the reason why I didn't really took that into account for like when I was choosing schools is because I realized that like even though you might have a better chance of like getting a research position at a private school than a public school, it really all depends on you. So if you really like don't put yourself out there, take the initiative and do your own research to find these research opportunities, like prepare yourself for interviews, make a proper resume, and then be able to like speak to like whatever PI or whoever you're like addressing that you really want to be part of the research and you're really passionate, then like if you do all those things, most likely or not, whether you're in a public school or private school, you're going to get that research opportunity. But if you decide not to take the initiative and like not do the things that I just said, that it really doesn't matter, because remember, that's all statistics and statistics, what's it called, like really just, how do I see it, probability. So yeah, make sure that like what Christian's saying, whatever college you go to, just like put yourself out there really is what you do, rather than like, I guess for me, yeah, it's like it's just what you do.
Yeah.
Just do your best in there.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Again, pros and cons to both. I think it's just a matter of like, if this is something you're considering, just consider which aspects of the public school system and the private school systems, I guess, align the most with you. Just, again, keep in mind, these are very general. Like every school is going to differ variously still. Like maybe, UC Berkeley, for example, might be different than UCLA, right? USC might be different than NYU. So just because NYU and USC might be put in the private section, or Berkeley and UCLA and also in the public section, there are also still differences between the two. But in case you were wondering about like the notion of like public versus private, again, I don't think it really matters at the end of the day. Just find what most aligns with you. I think Michael, David, and I, if we were all attending public schools, we'd all be more than happy and would still continue to do what we're doing today. I think we all can agree with that on that. I don't think choosing between public or private just because, oh, maybe public school gets a bad rap or maybe private schools are seen as snobby. Like, I don't think that's something it's like a petty comment that people will throw out there around the college system, and I just think it's unnecessary to figure out. So don't let that dictate kind of your decisions on that. Alrighty, awesome. Moving on to our last question before we go into some final tips. This was a big question, in fact, actually. It was for those, we know that the college application process this year definitely pretty wild, at least from what I've heard in California. I think Michael and David, maybe you've heard of it too. Well, I've seen a lot on Reddit, I'll put it that way. We know this year for college hasn't been maybe the greatest for some. We know acceptance rate ranges have been like all over the place. Obviously, the number of applicants increased because a lot of schools removed the SAT or ACT, so standardized testing option was, it was made optional. They relaxed on some requirements, and in turn, obviously, you have larger amounts of applicants. COVID, I think, definitely still played a huge role. Like you're at home trying to balance a school life and work on college applications. And while we may have thought, oh, this will be easier because we're home, in all honesty, a lot of students struggled still because it was a whole new environment and it was hard to really get engaged compared to when we were in person. So we understand that a lot of things happen. I know for a fact that the UC system in California, I heard, was pretty brutal this year. It's been, yeah. See, Michael David can vouch for that. I've seen Reddit too. Like, it's not surprise. I think it's no surprise when I look at that and I look on TikTok and then everyone's having a huge crisis about it. And when you read like the statistics of how things are shaping up or why it is the way it is, then it's like, wow, it's almost like me, David, and Michael all dodged a bullet in our year. So where this is all leading into is that I know a lot of students right now are deciding between community college or four-year institution. So deciding between a 2-year and a 4-year school. I think that's actually a really big decision, especially in this time right now too. And the reason why I say that is, I guess I first want to put out the fact that just because you go to community college, it doesn't mean you're dumb or it doesn't mean you're less successful. I think everyone gets such a bad rap that community college is for like the kids who couldn't do well in high school and the kids who like aren't going to be successful in life. And I think that's such a terrible notion because I have known of students who will become valedictorians or like salutatorians of their school and still go to community college because community college, one, it's so cheap. At least for my specific community college in the area, you get like your first 2 years for free, or it's like only like $1,000 a year. Like compare $1,000 a year to 60K at USC. Like that's a huge difference. Tuition is a huge factor, and like especially in COVID, there's a lot of hardships that a lot of families are facing with like job security and like the way kind of like the whole the whole economic market has turned out. Like 1 second the stock market will crash, the next second GameStop ends up spurging out of nowhere. So like I understand like there's a lot of hardships. So if financial hardships are a big concern and financial aid didn't turn your way, I would say community college is a great option because it's so cheap for the first year or two. Additionally, if you maybe didn't get into a school that you wanted to and all the schools you have as your like accepted pool, maybe your mind changed. Maybe you look back and you're like, oh, I don't know if I really want to attend there. If that's the case, don't go, because I have a lot of friends who end up going to schools that they go to because that's all they had, and then they hate it there and they're trying to transfer out. So why bother going to a school that's going to charge you anywhere from like 20 to 60K, and then you end up transferring, whereas you can go to a community college, stay there for a year or two, pay only like $1,000, $2,000, and boom, transfer out. Like you save so much more money. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you started; it's how you finish. Your degree is not going to say community college plus USC. It's just going to say USC. So I think if you're considering community college and you're worried about the fact of like, oh, people are going to look at me funny, don't. I think I totally get that pressure. I think all three of us can agree that I think that, I don't know about you, Michael and David, but did community college ever get a bad rap in your high school?
Yeah, in like my middle school and high school, a lot of people are memeing about like, oh, you're gonna go to GCC, but like even my mentors and like a few other people I talked to, like some of the more successful people went to community colleges, transferred, like they get to like law school and med school or like other professions. So like it's by no means a deterrence to your academic career. It's just like the beginning.
Yeah. What about you, David? Do you have any experiences with that?
Yeah, same thing here. There's a community college nearby called Crafton Hills College, with everyone memed in high school as Harvard on the Hills. So yeah, it definitely has some bad raps to community college, but it really depends on like whether you see it as like a community college route is like something you want to take, and like something like you should definitely weigh out like the benefits and like pros and cons to figure out if this is something you should do or not.
Yeah, and I agree. Like I think everyone just bashed on community college, or like we memed it, and like Michael, I agree. Like it was PCC for us too. They would be like, oh, PCC, like, and then like it was because everyone in high school or middle school they were like super immature about it. That's all they knew. They all grew up, and this may be the same for some students out there, maybe not, right? Like maybe some schools support community college, and if that's the case, I really respect that because I think community college is such a big thing that no one cares about anymore. But like, or not that they don't care about anymore, but they don't put a great emphasis on it. Like not even College Board will emphasize community college because think about it, they want you to take SATs because four-year institutions need those. Community college doesn't. Therefore, College Board just wants to make money because it's a corporation. So it's just going to it's not going to support that, right? And I don't know, people would meme it in high school. People would say, oh, it's terrible. Yet once all of us got into college, I don't think we realized how much that statement was actually important to actually like consider community college if we wanted to. Because I know of kids, at USC, like they'll like for them, USC wasn't the best fit for them, but they went anyways. And now they're trying to transfer to different universities, right? And they're like, I hate it here. I want to transfer somewhere else. and they're not on any financial aid package. So that's like paying 60K just to transfer. Like it's not the best, I think, too. And then think about it. If you're like unsure of your major, if you're unsure of what you want to do, or like you still don't have that kind of career path settled out, that's totally okay. Don't rush yourself into a 4-year institution. Take your time to explore those options in community college, and then they'll help you transfer out too. I think another good point is if you do want to transfer, going to a 4-year to another college isn't the best option. Most 4-year institutions aren't like they'll help you transfer if need be, but they're not going to give you the same amount of resources or care or attention that a community college does. The community colleges in my area put so much emphasis on helping students try to transfer, like they want students to transfer out. 4-year institutions want to keep you there, right? So they're not going to put as much emphasis. So if you do want to transfer and you don't want to resort to the school that you're planning on going to, don't go to it. Go to a community college. Your transfer rates are a lot better. So I think that's just, it's a big thing to consider as well too. And transfer rates aren't bad. And for some schools, the acceptance rates definitely low.
Christian, you froze for a sec. Oh, okay, never mind.
Oh, okay, no worries. Better now?
Yes.
Yeah, better now.
Yeah, so I was just saying that like for community college, like or like getting accepted into other institutions, the acceptance rate might be lower for some schools. Like that's true, like transfer rates. But I think transfer rates for a lot of schools also actually increase. I know USC has a big transfer pool applicant rate too. Like they have a transfer program for those around the SoCal area. So I think that's something to consider as well too. Michael or Jay, do you want any add on to that?
Just another note about your 4-year to 4-year institution. I can attest to that because prior to the pandemic, I also tried to transfer. And like, while I did get accepted to other universities, like the entire process was pretty lengthy because like the transfer administration, one could say, like they weren't the most receptive. So like I'd have to constantly send emails, and like the entire process is just overcomplicated, I'd argue. So yeah, if you're gonna go to a community college where they're gonna give you the ability to transfer all these resources, then definitely take that over going to a 4-year and regarding it later.
Nice. And then like for me, if you like if you like already know or like you have a general idea what you want to do, whether it's pre-med or engineering, and like you do not plan on transferring to another college, because like what Michael and Christian is saying, like I agree. For community college, I heard, and I think it's probably like well known, that from community college to 4 years, it's much easier to transfer than going from another 4-year to another 4-year. But if it's like beyond those two, like if you want to transfer and like if you're not sure what you do, in my opinion, I feel like if also like money is not the issue, you should, in my opinion, you should probably first try to hit to a 4-year university. And I can explain like a couple of reasons why. Like first of all, it goes back to this idea of opportunity. So, but trust me, I'm going to talk more about other than just opportunity. But yeah, a lot of private, like a lot of 4-year university will offer more, like you said, research, internship, shadowing, and stuff like that. And know that when you come in as a transfer student, maybe you transfer in 2 years later, or I don't know, 3 years later, mostly 2 years later, is that you come in and you're going to be a junior. A lot of research lab at USC, I know it's like other colleges as well. It's like it's harder for juniors and seniors to get research lab because they want the young ones so they can stay in the labs for longer and help out a lot more. And so yeah, it comes down to opportunity. And second is like a social life. You hear that a lot of transfer students will have a lot of difficulty like finding friends or like finding a group of people to hang with in college. And that's also partially because they come in as transfers, and a lot of the students that are the same age, the same year, the same major, like they already have their own friend group. So definitely it would be a lot harder for transfer students. Of course, that's not always like, it depends on like what you do. Since I know a lot of transfer students that joined a frat, like for me, I'm part of a frat right now. And a lot of transfer students there, like they like also had difficulty finding friends. But once they joined APO, like they found a lot of good buddies to hang with. So yeah, of course it depends. It would be harder, but it's not impossible. So yeah, in terms of like research opportunities, maybe a social life, it really depends on you. So yeah, there are like pros and cons on whether you should choose a 4-year university and 2-year university. But in my opinion, like for graduate schools, you want to make sure that when you stay in a university, like the longer you stay in there, the more chance of you to learn more about opportunities there for you and more time for you to take these opportunities. So yeah, it all depends on you.
Yeah, awesome. I think kind of goes overall arching point is that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what path you choose, but just remember whether that means going to community college, whether that means going to a 4-year institution, or maybe even you choose to go to like vocational school or something else, right? At the end of the day, remember that your success is not dependent on where you're going. It's just what you do and like how you're going to make of it. So I just want to emphasize that point because I know community college gets such a bad rap, and I totally definitely internalized that to some extent in high school, and then once you get into college, it's like wow, like no, the community college is actually it's a big brain move, honestly. There's a lot of people. It's a power move. So I have so much respect for those that actually do it because it's like they actually know that it will probably benefit them in the long term as well too. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Community college, it's not a bad option. It's actually a really good option. I argue maybe it's even better than going to a 4 year sometimes. Just depends per student. So yeah, so that wraps all the main questions that a lot of students asked, and like when we saw throughout like the forums and we were asking about this to other students. But we just want to give, I guess, a couple last tips. Like we all have like a certain ideology, so just keep that in mind. We all grew up in certain conditions or whatnot, so we're gonna have our own perspectives on these things. But what we want to emphasize that I think is pretty universal for everyone is that you need, in terms of like choosing college, you need to recognize what are the core values of the school, or like what do you value the most, right? That could be tuition, that could be location, it could be something maybe we didn't mention that you also want to figure out. That's totally fine. But make sure you understand where do you put those on like your own little list of what's important to you. Make sure you understand like, yeah, if tuition is very important, consider that. If family is very important, consider that. That's up to you. We're not going to tell you which one's higher than another because for each of us it was very different. But just recognize that you're going to have those factors and put those into considerations and see which schools line up the best with those values. I think that's, the most important thing to do first. And then I think just figure out what's best for you. Don't worry about like, obviously, your friends and family, they'll give you advice as well too. And, to some extent, I think family plays a huge role. Like they're maybe helping you get through college with like tuition, but just remember that for you to like get through, it's at the end of the day, it's going to be your decision. So take everyone's advice, composite it together. Like, that includes our advice. Take that all into consideration and then build that on yourself. You can choose to accept our advice. You can choose to ignore it. Either way, we just wanted to give this out to everyone. And then finally, you will be fine no matter what you choose for, as long as you're willing to put into work. Like, I don't want to say that, oh, once you get into, let's say, an Ivy League school, it's going to be smooth sailing for there. Or, oh, let's say you go to community college. It means you can slack off. Like, none of that is going to be implied. You have to still put in the work necessary. Everything will be okay. Everything will turn out okay, as long as you're willing to put in the work and do what's necessary for you to get to that point. Because getting into college, that's one hurdle in itself. And we obviously congratulate you on making it through that hurdle. Continuing to push through it and coming across your next hurdle is what's going to be the most important part. College applications is one story, but don't get me wrong, trying to complete college itself is a whole nother ballpark, right? Like that's going to be the real test. It's you actually demonstrating that you belong there, you deserve to be there, and you're going to try to demonstrate that to the school. Like, yeah, I deserve to be here, and let me show you why, right? Like, so make the most of it. Don't let whatever future plans you have for you go to waste. Make the most of it. Doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter what the school is. Mike or David, do you want to add any final comments?
No, I agree with everything what you said, and just another final thought that once you do get to college, try to make the most use of your professor's office hours. Like they'll hook you up with connections or opportunities that you'll be able to bolster your resume with or just your experience with. So yeah.
And then I can add like, so I know I was in a position like back in high school, like deciding which college to go to. And it was really hard for me since I really didn't know where I wanted to go. But what really helped me, and I know it helped a lot of people, is really do reach out to any alumni at your school that went to those specific colleges. Since I know a lot of my friends, like one of my friends was deciding whether she wants to go to UCLA or not. And she was able to talk with a student that went to our high school that also goes to UCLA. And like, he was able to tell his side, like, how was it like at UCLA? What was his experience? How he decided on choose to go to UCLA, and like he basically talked all about like the different factors he considered when he was choosing. So yeah, just remember, like even if you don't know them, like they went to your high school, but you have no clue who they are, you never talked to them once, like still reach out because remember, like this is like I'm not saying this is like your whole future, but like this decision will really impact like what you do in the future. Like it's definitely what you do at which college you do. So like don't even worry. But still, this is an important decision, and you want to make sure that do not let like maybe if you're very introverted or shy, like don't let yourself prevent you from like seeking out these opportunities that could eventually help you. So again, if you don't know them, I promise you a majority of them will most likely are willing to help you. So yeah, reach out to them.
Yeah, sure. No, that's totally awesome. And then again, remember, we all have different experiences. Like, even though maybe the three of us here do enjoy the lifestyles we built at USC, there are definitely students out there that still like, they're like, oh my gosh, it's terrible, I hate it. Like, I think we're all cognizant of that. So just remember that you are going to get differing opinions from people. People are going to tell you that they love it at the school, and people are going to tell you that they hate it. And that's true for any school. It doesn't matter where it is. But I think also, I would also advise you that if they do say that, don't just be like, oh yeah, like 8 of them said they hated it and 6 said they liked it. So therefore, because 8 outweighs 6, like, no, don't do anything of the sorts like that. Like, don't quantify it. Try to consider like what were the underlying reasons why they didn't like the school, and maybe those values don't matter so much to you, so you'll be okay with it. Or maybe why kids really like the school, maybe that's what you align with. So that's why, oh, okay, maybe even though only 6 students said it compared to like 8 or even 10, I align with their values more than I do with the other people. So remember, keep that into consideration. Everyone's gonna have different opinions. At the end of the day, it's your decision, it's your call, and we just hope that we were able to provide some help. So that being said, we know that right now it's probably the peak optimal time that you all will try to decide colleges. I think you have until like May 1st to decide, and then there's also wait lists to consider afterwards too. For wait lists, we just recommend you opt into it. It never hurts. Wait list, opt into it, but also consider the same factors that we mentioned. But again, that being said, we wish the best of luck to you all deciding your colleges. We know that regardless of what you choose, you're all going to do great. It's going to work out. Everything will be fine. And we know that all of you, if you're putting the initiative to work through the college application process, you'll also do the same in the future as well. So that being said, we congratulate you on wherever you've been accepted to, whatever the future holds in store for you. Hopefully we hear from some of you how things go. But other than that, we wish you the best of luck in the future.